wake up the little one. The hour of convening has arrived. I actually wake up, I may have said this before, but I actually wake up my kids that way. I walk in their room before school and I'm like, the hour of convening has arrived. It's now time to get out of bed. It doesn't go over very well. They're not very impressed. All right, where are we at? Yeah, that's right. I need to bring the gap. Can I check it out and bring it home with me? It is my honor to recognize the leprechaun from the 53rd District.
Mr. President, and Lucky Charms is green clovers and all that stuff. I'm here standing with the outstanding appropriations chairman and his wonderful son, John. And he's a new member of the Tillery family from a few weeks ago, and we have the honor of having him on the floor with us today. He's asleep, so let's not wake him up.
Are you talking about Blake or John?
Either one.
Okay.
And my brother Jerry Mullis is with us today, and he just got out of the clink recently, so we thought we'd have him here. Yeah. Mr. President, other than those great things, I don't know what else to add, except I'm here with our wonderful colleagues, a few of them, and the journal's been read and found to be correct, very correct, because the proofreader's standing right beside you.
You're just so talented, Senator. So talented. I feel like I need to whisper. All right. Is there objection to dispensing with the reading of the journal? The chair hears none, and the reading of the journal is dispensed with. Is there objection to the confirmation of the journal? The chair hears none, and the journal is confirmed. All senators who have bills or resolutions, please bring them to the secretary's desk. You are certainly running out of time. First reading and reference of Senate bills and resolutions, please.
Senate Resolution 741 by Senators Anna Vitarte of the 31st and others, a resolution creating the Senate Study Committee on the creation of a Georgia cybersecurity force and for other purposes.
Rules.
Senate Resolution 742 by Senator Anna Vitarte of the 31st, a resolution recognizing Mr. Sammy Robinson and dedicating a bridge in his honor and for other purposes.
Transportation.
Senate Resolution 744 by Senators Rahman of the 5th and others, a resolution celebrating the anniversary of the signing of the Lahore
Rules.
Resolution. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Mr. Secretary, can you please read reports of standing committees?
Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Health and Human Services has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 1186, do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Watson of the 1st District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Insurance and Labor has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 1021, do pass. House Bill 1195, do pass. House Bill 969, do pass. House Bill 1059, do pass. House Bill 1308, do pass. House Bill 1324, do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Burke of the 11th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on State and Local Government Operations has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 620, do pass. Senate Bill 621, do pass. Senate Bill 622, do pass. Senate Bill 624, do pass. House Bill 1370, do pass. House Bill 1397, do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Anderson of the 24th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on State and Local Government Operations General has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 1381, do pass. House Bill 1385, do pass. House Bill 1406, do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Anderson of the 24th District Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
All right, it's now time for morning roll call. It is now time for morning roll call. Are there any motions to excuse? The chair recognizes, out of sequence, the senator from the 17th.
Good morning, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 33rd and probably all those folks he normally excuses.
Did he hand you the rest of his list?
He did not. That's what I'm trying to say. I don't know who else he would normally excuse, but definitely the senator from the 33rd for business outside the Capitol.
Without objection, the senator from the 33rd is excused. The chair recognizes his good friend from the 37th.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 12th.
Without objection, the senator from the 12th is excused. The chair recognizes the senator from the 22nd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ask unanimous consent. Excuse the senator from the 5th.
Without objection, the senator from the 5th is excused. The chair recognizes the senator from the 11th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 8th.
Without objection, the senator from the 8th is excused. Chair recognizes the senator from the 24th.
Mr. President, I ask to excuse the senator from the 54th.
Without objection, the senator from the 54th is excused. Are there any additional motions to excuse? Chair recognizes the senator from the 29th.
Chair asks for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 27th for business inside the Capitol.
Without objection, the senator from the 27th is excused. The secretary will call the roll. Senators, signify your presence by voting the A switch. The secretary will unlock the machine. All right, it's now time for our morning devotional, and ask that all senators take your seats. Cease all audible conversations. Give your undivided attention. Doorkeepers, secure the chamber at this time. It's my honor to recognize a senator from the 43rd to lead us in our pledge and to introduce to us our chaplain of the day.
Good morning. Please stand for our pledge to the United States flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now to our Georgia flag. Good morning. This morning I have the privilege and honor of introducing Reverend Dr. Louis E Logan Ii. He is currently serving as servant pastor of St. Paul AME Church, Covington, Georgia. A church planter, builder, social activist, entrepreneur, Black Church Studies interim program manager, Fuller Seminary, Pasadena, California, Pan-African Studies adjunct professor, Cal State, LA, and hospice chaplain in pursuit of ACPE supervisory training. Dr. Logan's credentials include a bachelor's of degree from Morehouse College, a Master of Divinity and Theology from Candler School of Theology, Emory University, and a Doctorate of Ministry from Columbia Theological Seminary in Decatur, Georgia, and 4 units CPE residency at Hoag Hospital Pastoral Care Department, Newport Beach, California. As a pastor and community organizer for more than 35 years, he has coordinated, facilitated, and/or participated in national interfaith events and visioning sessions, hosted annual conferences, district meetings, leadership retreats, reorganizational strategic planning meetings, and plenary sessions, and organizing press conferences. A child of the civil rights legacy, Dr. Logan was profoundly affected by the voices of tremendous luminaries such as Malcolm X, Maya Angelou, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and Dr. Angela Davis. In fact, when preparing for undergraduate school, Dr. Logan only applied to and was accepted by one school, Morehouse College, an HBCU. While attending Candler, he served as president of the Black Caucus and was instrumental in establishing a Black church studies program and recruiting Reverend Dr. Robert M. Franklin as its first director. He has traveled the country preaching, organizing, and promoting justice. What I found to be interesting is that Dr. Logan has media experience. It includes intermittent radio broadcasting since 1987, from Athens to Douglas, Georgia, and Savannah, Georgia to Los Angeles, with Faith on the Front Line and streaming media productions. Sensing a deeper call, a deeper empathetic ministry, in 2017, Dr. Logan established and began developing the Chaplaincy Care Network, committed to offering spiritual support services to patients, families, and caregiving clinicians and targeted communities. His ministerial travels have been from Canada to Mexico to Singapore to India to Bermuda, Puerto Rico, Jamaica, and all 50 states. A lover of languages and communication, Dr. Logan is currently learning Spanish, German, Mandarin, French, Arabic. He is the father of 3 adult children and 5 grandchildren. I introduce to you Reverend Dr. Logan.
Good morning. We bring you greetings on behalf of the fine members of St. Paul A&B Church in Covington, Georgia, on behalf of Bishop Reginald T. Jackson, our bishop in the 6th Episcopal District. We greet you and thank you so much, Senator Anderson, and to our illustrious Lieutenant Governor, and to all of you who make up this august assemblage this morning. I'm grateful and humbled to have the opportunity also to celebrate the legacy of my dad, whose 82nd birthday would have been tomorrow, March 18th. While an avid and voracious bibliophile, he was also a man of the soil and taught me a little bit about what it means to plant seeds. And from this, I had a keen kind of attraction to a particular passage in Matthew 13, where Jesus taught about a sower of seeds, a farmer who sowed good seeds, and the seeds sprung up, but somehow or another, an enemy came in and sowed weeds. And the wheat and the weeds began to grow together. The servants of the house came with alarm to the farmer and said, "Hey, these seeds are growing up with the weeds. What happened?" And I was struck by the wisdom and sagacity of the farmer, who said, ultimately, enemy has done this. And then the servant said, in panic, fright, maybe we should pull up the weeds so that the wheat will flourish. But I was struck by the sagacity again of the farmer. It seems like he took a page out of Isaiah 28, 26 through 29, where it says that the Lord gives wisdom to the farmer, gives unusual understanding to the farmer, allows the farmer to use the right tools for the right reason in the right season. Farmer says, no, don't do that. You do that, you'll pull up the wheat and the weeds together. Tell you what, just let the two grow up together. And at the time of the harvest, I'll have the harvesters to do the separating. And from this, I just want to kind of leave some nuggets with you, because this is kind of a parable, parabola. This is what Jesus would do to kind of bring wisdom alongside the disciples, so that they would have something to think about, something out of their normal daily experience that would speak to them for years to come, as my dad's wisdom speaks to me even to the day. As a faith leader and as a pastor, I have to remember that I'm sowing seeds, and there's always going to be opposition. There's always going to be resistance. I can't focus on that. I've got to focus on not just the current challenge, but the promise of what is to come. And I leave that with you, that the farmer's wisdom reminds us, don't worry about the enemy and what the enemy sows in terms of negativity and in terms of wicked schemes. Recognize the resilience of the wheat, because the wheat always wins. Thank you so much. Oh, okay. Let's pray. Dear God, we thank you so much for what you've taught us, what you continue to teach us, for the awesome opportunity and responsibility of sowing good seeds and of being responsible with the opportunity you've given us to serve the citizens of Georgia and the world, this capital state that touches all corners of the globe. God, help us to sow good seed, to remember that in the end, our deeds will be sifted out. And help us, God, to remember that the wheat always wins. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Are there any unanimous consents? The chair sees none. Does any senator wish to rise on a point of personal privilege? The chair recognizes the senator from the 42nd.
Good morning, everyone. Happy St. Patrick's Day and Diaspora Day. I am recognizing the Doctor of the Day, who is a constituent of mine, Dr. Anna Scold. She has been very dedicated as a Doctor of the Day and has done it year after year. So I wanted to tell you all a little bit about her and give her our thanks. She is the Chief of Palliative Care at Southeast Permanente Medical Group of Georgia. And she also serves as physician lead for medical ethics, co-chairs the Outpatient Ethics Committee, is an active member of both Emory Midtown and Emory St. Joseph's Ethics Committees, as well as co-chairing the National KP Interregional Ethics Committee. She continues to educate and advocate for better advanced care planning in the state of Georgia as member of the Georgia Post Collaborative. She grew up in Florida and is the daughter of Swedish immigrants. She received her Bachelor of Science degree at the University of Florida and her public health degree from the University of Pittsburgh, medical degree from West Virginia University School of Medicine. Dr. Scold met her husband while working in Denali, Alaska, and they and their 2 children continue to enjoy hiking and camping on a regular basis. Thank you so much for serving us today, Dr. Anna Scold. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 39th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning, colleagues. I rise today to recognize March as Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month. We are joined in the gallery by a few people who are on the front lines of fighting this disease, representing the Atlanta Medical Association, Emory, and the Gastroenterologic and Endoscopy Society. And I actually would encourage every member of this body, to take some time to speak to them today when they come down and join me on the floor. Colorectal cancer is the 3rd most commonly diagnosed and 2nd most lethal cancer in Georgia, making our role in combating it especially important. Thankfully, the disease is more manageable than ever due to the advances in screening techniques and improvements in treatment. More people are surviving and thriving following their battle with this disease. However, those incredible advancements are not equally accessible to all of the people in our state. Our low-income residents have less access to care, which means it's harder to catch cancers and other illnesses early. For those who are able to find it quickly, the 5-year survival rate is over 90%. However, for those who catch it the latest, the 5-year survival rate is only 15%. The cost of treatment only increases with each passing day that it festers as well, which disproportionately burdens Georgians who have the fewest resources to deal with it in the first place. If there is one thing that every person in this state can do to mark this month of awareness, it's to encourage everyone they know to consult their healthcare provider and begin screening regularly. And note also that the recommended age for screening has been dropped from 50 to 45. Thank you, Mr. President. However, for those of us in this chamber, our responsibility is different. Anybody who has insurance, screenings are available to you at no cost, but at a minimum, this is where Medicaid expansion would allow hundreds of thousands of people to access preventative care, most of whom can't even afford a basic checkup now. I know it's St. Patrick's Day and I see a lot of green. I am in blue for colorectal cancer awareness. I had a friend about a decade ago at 38 who was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer and ultimately was not able to win that battle and passed away just days after his 39th birthday. This is a treatable disease. I encourage all of you to go get your screenings, encourage everybody you know to get their screenings, and know that we will never truly control this disease until one's income is decoupled from one's chance to survive. And I want to just remind everybody, and thank you again, earlier this month, we actually did a Senate resolution recognizing March 2022 as Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month. So thank you all for that. And if you would, I would like to have our guests, oh, they're in the back. If you would just note our guests, this is the Atlanta Medical Association, Dr. Kevin Woods, Gastroenterologic and Endoscopic Society, Dr. Shaw. Thank you for the work you do every day on the front lines of this disease. Thank you, and I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 52nd for an announcement.
Wanted to introduce y'all, thank you, Mr. President, to my daughter. She's the smartest of the 5 of us. She was summa cum laude in physics from University of Georgia and was able to go this year. She graduated in May, was able to go this year into the University of Oregon physics program, and specifically geophysics, straight into her PhD. And they're paying everything plus a salary. It's awesome. So she was also a college soccer player, and she might have attended our President of the Senate's university if they weren't the only ACC school that didn't have a soccer team. But the new president tells me it's on his bucket list, and he's working on it. But she is spending time going to the Galapagos Islands and climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. She's sort of an outdoors girl, and now she hangs out in volcanoes, puts some sensors in them and stuff. And well, also I'll brag on her a little bit more. She's studying AI now. She codes in 6 languages. So she claimed she was going to run against me in the future, and her campaign was going to be the better Huffstetler. So I hope she does it. Anyway, just
where do I send the check?
Glad to have her home for a week. Thank you, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 14th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. Every now and then we get a chance to be able to reconnect with friends. We've talked about how important relationships are in life and even in our service down here. And on a campaign trail a number of months ago, I was out in Carrollton speaking, and a gentleman walked up to me and said, "Do you remember me?" And Kurt's in the back. Kurt, if you don't mind standing up. Kurt and I grew up together in Montana, and then he moved away, and he and a leadership group had Coleman Cable that here in the South we know of Southwire. Southwire acquired it, and that made him a Georgian. And so, Kurt, I just want to say it's great to reconnect. We appreciate you coming down, and we appreciate the fact that Southwire is that gym that we have over there that continues to give just under the surface and doesn't make a whole lot of fanfare about that. So welcome to your capital, sir.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 35th with a point of personal privilege. Yes, ma'am. The chair invites you down the middle lane.
Wow. Can I have that slip? Can I have? It's a great day in the Senate this morning because we have with us people from all over the world and those honorable consulate generals and other diplomats who represent so many countries. Right now in the gallery we have the Consulate General, Juan Navarro. You want to stand when I call your names? From Argentina. We have the Consulate General Deputy from Belgium, and the Consulate General is Michael Gerbert Zoff. I hope you can stay standing when I call you. And we have Elaine Guvaritz. I hope I didn't mess your name up too much. We have our Liberia Consulate General, Cynthia Lynn Blanford. Thank you. We have our Canada Consulate General, Mr. James Hill. Thank you. We have our Israel Consulate General, Alex Gandler. Please stand. Thank you. Our Consulate General from Mexico, Javier Diaz de Leon. Thank you. And our Madam Consulate General from Nigeria, and I found out I'm 70% Nigerian, so you're my sister, the Honorable Ambassador Dr. Amira Samala. I hope I didn't mess your name up too much. Consulate General from Brazil, Consulate General Carlos Abri. There you go. Our India Consulate General, Dr. Swati Vijay Kulkari. Thank you. And our Consulate General from Bahamas, Shireen Johnson. Our representative, there you are, Dr. Isa Ambo, who is Haiti. Are you there, Dr. Ambo? Yes. And we have many others, let's see, that are not on my list. But we have a resolution that is Resolution 652 that says recognizing March 17th, 2022 as International Diaspora Day at the State Capitol. And I see Ms. Stovall, who is representing one of our African groups as well. And Zambia, Congo, Cameroon, South Africa, Kenya, Ghana, Ivory Coast, Gambia. I said Liberia already, the Honorable Consulate General, and also Ethiopia, Nigeria, Tanzania, Uganda, and many other countries are represented. They were in room 307 earlier. You're here now. We have resolutions for you and honorary Georgia Citizen awards as well. So I hope to meet you in person very soon, and we're going to take pictures at 11:30. So thank you, Mr. President. And everyone, please stand up and let's give them a warm Senate welcome. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. All right. Thank you very much, and I yield the well, and again, all the honorable ones, we thank you for being here.
The Rules Chairman rarely pushes his button to speak during points of personal privilege, but he has today. I'm certain he would like all of your attention. The Chair recognizes the distinguished Rules Chairman for a point of personal privilege.
Mr. President, it's that time when the House misbehaves, when the Senate is doing lots of work for the people of Georgia, and even picking up and doing House bills. Well, Mr. President, as they said in NASA, Houston, there is a problem. Well, senators, there is a problem. The House is neglecting their duty again. We have done 18 House bills over here. 18. You know how many they've done of ours? 1. And that's right. Aren't you outraged? Yes, me too. And the one they did, they ripped out and put their bill and sent it over. So I am furious. I am outraged about this. So ask your House member, when is the House going to pick up Senate bills, which are the better bill anyway? So ask them when they're going to work for the people of Georgia. Pick up the good bills and make decisions on them. So please, let it be known. Let it be written. Are you writing this down? Let it be written.
Every word.
That we need to see some Senate bills on the floor of the House. Mr. President, thank you for this moment, for this opportunity. And gentlemen and ladies, please let it be known that we will not stop helping the people of Georgia. Thank you, Mr. President. I'll yield the will.
Delivered like a true statesman. Does the chair need to recognize the senator from the 26th for a point of personal privilege? For what purpose does the senator from the 26th rise?
Inquire.
State
please.
your inquiry.
Isn't it true that we can play the same game? We can table House Bill 304, House Bill 147, and House Resolution 683.
Certainly the gentleman knows of what he speaks, but this chamber puts policy over politics. With that, you have a consent calendar of privileged resolutions before you. Does any senator wish to remove a resolution from the consent calendar? Is there objection to adoption of the resolutions on the consent calendar? The chair hears none, and the resolutions on the consent calendar are adopted. Chair recognizes the senator from the 56th. Are there any motions to withdraw and commit? The chair recognizes it's not crossover, you can't run. Chair recognizes the senator from the 56th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd ask unanimous consent that House Bill 469 be withdrawn from the Committee on Rules and committed to the Committee on Finance.
Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption?
House Bill 469 by Representative Stevens of the 164th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 2 of Chapter 7 of Title 48 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to the imposition, rate, and computation of and exemptions from state income taxes so as to extend a sunset for Code Section 48-7-29.8 relating to tax credits for the rehabilitation of historic structures, to provide for the effectiveness of prior law upon such sunset, to provide for tax credits for manufacturers of zero-emission motor vehicles and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Senator, have you gotten the approval of both chairs? They both agree. They have. The senator from the 56th has asked for unanimous consent that House Bill 469 be withdrawn from the Committee on Rules and be committed to the Committee on Finance. Is there objection? The chair hears none, and House Bill 469 has been moved. You have a consent calendar of local bills before you, Mr. Secretary. Are there any objections filed to any bills on the local consent calendar?
Mr. President, there are no objections filed.
Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the Committee on State and Local Government, which is favorable to the passage of the bills on the local calendar? Chair hears none, and the report of the committee is agreed to. The questions on the passage of the bills on the local calendar. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. The Secretary will unlock the machine. Before we move on with the rest of the day, y'all want to know how you voted, didn't you? On the passage of the bills on the local calendar, the yeas are 47, the nays are 2, and the bills having received the requisite constitutional majority are therefore passed. I can't help but notice all the various shades of green today for St. Patrick's Day. It seems like everybody but me has green on. And for like the 30th year in a row, I've forgotten to wear green, but I have a very good excuse. Today at our house, we don't celebrate St. Patrick's Day. We celebrate my wife's birthday. So while everyone's looking for a green tie or a green shirt to wear, I'm looking for an Amazon package on the porch, which showed that it was rerouted in the middle of the night and didn't get there on time. So once again, I apologize for not wearing green, but happy birthday, Brooke. If you're watching, you're probably not, but happy birthday. And this is for the next 2 weeks, we are the same age. So that's an important bragging right at our house. Chair recognizes the majority leader for a motion.
Mr. President, I move that HB 304 be engrossed.
Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption?
House Bill 304, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 48 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to revenue and taxation so as to provide for a tax credit for medical equipment and supplies manufacturers and pharmaceutical and medicine manufacturers, to provide for definitions, to provide for conditions and limitations on certain tax credits, to provide for related matters and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
The majority leader has moved that House Bill 304 be engrossed. Is there objection? There is objection. Would the majority leader waive to speak to it? Would the minority leader like to speak to her objection? She waives. All those in favor of engrossing HB 304 vote yea, opposed nay. The Secretary will unlock the machine. On the motion, the yeas are 32, the nays are 18, and this chamber has engrossed House Bill 304. All right, we're now going to move on to the rules calendar. We are now going to move on to the rules calendar. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption of Senate Resolution 544?
Senate Resolution number 544 by Senator Rhett of the 33rd, a resolution commending the World Taiwanese Chamber of Commerce and recognizing the organization's 28th annual conference in Atlanta on March 26, 2022, and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Rules recommends that this resolution do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Mullis of the 53rd District Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
The chair recognizes the rarely late senator from the 33rd to present the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President, my fellow senators, colleagues, friends, and the rest of y'all. First of all, I just want to wish everybody a happy happy St. Patrick's Day, I'm sorry. And just ask you to support this resolution. It's a simple resolution recognizing the World Taiwanese Chamber of Commerce at their 28th annual conference here in the city of Atlanta. I also want to reach out to my colleague from the 28th for his leadership in this, and I yield well. Thank you, Mr. President.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against Senate Resolution 544? The chair sees none. Is there objection to agree in the report of the committee which is favorable to the adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none, and the report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. Questions on the adoption of the resolution. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the adoption of the resolution, the yeas are 55, the nays are 0. And the resolution, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore adopted. Ms. Secretary, can you please read the caption of House Bill 304?
House Bill 304 by Representatives Lott of the 122nd and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 48-9-3 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated, relating to the levy of excise taxes on motor fuels, rate, taxation of motor vehicles not commonly sold or measured by gallon, prohibition of tax on motor fuel by political subdivisions, exemptions, and exempted sales, so as to exempt all sales of motor fuel by duly licensed distributors and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Finance recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Hufstetler of the 52nd District Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
I would encourage every senator to pay very close attention to this bill. I can assure you all 11 million of your constituents care about this one. The chair recognizes the senator from the 52nd to present House Bill 304.
Thank you, Mr. President. The proposal in the bill before you today is to suspend the Georgia tax on fuel through May 31st of this year, 2022. The current tax is 29.1 cents on gasoline, 32.6 on diesel, 0.01 on aviation, and 29.1 on some special fuels. Our last month was about 157 million collected. This will be for a little over 2 months. So you can do the math. It's between $300 and $400 million that will be replaced with unspecified fund balance. But I also want to talk about oil. The U.S. became a net exporter a few years ago. We import and we export because some refineries use different oils. Our lighter weight from, say, Texas is better suited to some other refineries. And the U.S. had passed Russia and Saudi Arabia a few years ago and became the #1 producer of crude oil. The U.S. increased oil production by 50% from 2016 to 2020. Again, the U.S. increased oil production by 50% from 2016 to 2020. And we were using less Russian oil. It was down to about 405,000 barrels. We're now using none with the Biden executive order last week, and I agree with that. And I also believe we should all come together during a war and leave politics out if it weakens our United States. But I also have to point out that the Keystone XL pipeline would have transported 830,000 barrels, over double what we were importing from Russia. It was canceled on day one of the Biden administration, and the developer gave up in June of last year. Dakota Access Pipeline has had court fights ordering it shut down and has been in a constant fight. It's hard to finance these companies when they're worried about the long term. When it's in operation, it provides more oil than we import from Russia also. Now, North Dakota is fighting to continue. The proposed Canadian pipeline is shut down. Gulf leases have been shut down. The president issued an executive order. A judge overturned it, and a month or so ago, that one got overturned. They're shut down as of now, and we've gone over a year with no activity on them. The Alaska leases were shut down. So now we've had a time where Russia and Saudi Arabia have passed the U.S. and put us at number 3 in production. Our president wants to double wind production offshore by 2030, and that's good. I certainly support that. I've signed a couple of solar bills wanting to use that. It's all good, but that's then and this is now. And also renewables replace natural gas and coal, not oil. Our Energy Secretary, Jennifer Granholm, is now asking oil companies to produce more oil, but in the last week, the number of oil rigs fell from 522 to 519. Oil production takes 6 months to a year, or sometimes years to get started, and then there's a shortage of parts, so you can't just go back and turn it on until you find equipment to produce it with and get things going again. And the other thing is, when you invest, you don't want a short-term revenue where they need you now, start producing, and then shut you down months later. You don't find investors jumping in for that. And I want to point out, too, this isn't just about oil, it's natural gas. 67% of our natural gas was coming from fracking. Have y'all looked at the price of natural gas lately? It's actually come down a little bit from one point, but it's double where it was a year ago. So we've dropped from being the number 1 producer of oil. We dropped from 13.1 million barrels to 11.6 million barrels per day. So we've got a problem that's not going to be solved overnight. It's going to be a while. Though Saudi Arabia could help out, but apparently hadn't been returning phone calls. The message was clear from day one of the Biden administration that they were going to shut down a lot of these leases and keep them from going on federal land. And it's disappointing to me because he was a senator in the 70s when we had a very painful lesson in being dependent on foreign oil. So now, yet barely a year in with the administration, we're getting back to that position. But we could have been in a position to help our allies who are facing a decision right now of whether to shut off Russian oil and then have a recession because of it. Ukraine is obviously a mess. We don't know what all the strategy is there. I support the president. I hope he's making the right decisions on that. He and the military know much more than a lot of us, and we have to, as a company, support that. But right now, the thing is, we've got a humanitarian crisis over there, but we've also got an environmental crisis in the Ukraine that's caused by Putin, a would-be Hitler over there. And that's not even counting the potential for nuclear plant issues. God forbid something happens there. So the 29 cents is not going to completely solve the suffering of our citizens, but it's a start and it's a statement. And we will have to fill it in with a rainy day fund, but it's raining a big storm on our citizens right now. They're also eaten up by inflation, which was caused by ignoring basic economics that say if you put a bunch of money in the economy and people are not working and that money's chasing fewer goods, then age-old supply and demand say that inflation is going to take off, and it did. Some of his economists said that this was the new economy. Those old rules didn't apply. That crazy thinking has been shut down now, I hope. Some in both parties up there said go big or go home. Well, I wish they'd all gone home. Though maybe not to run for state office if they come back, but instead, they spent like drunken sailors. We went big and now we're paying for it severely, and it probably won't end well. Many of us, including myself and others, and I know the chairman of Appropriations and I do a little monthly newsletter where we were both saying this a year ago and before a year ago, what was going to happen. Not that we're that smart, but it's just freshman level macroeconomics, which actually I took as a senior in high school. I was on the dual enrollment program. And I see that look. They did have dual enrollment back then when I was in school. So anyway, we were sounding the alarm. Janet Yellen was saying the risk of inflation March 14th, she said, of last year was very low, and we have the tools to handle it. She subscribed to that belief that the new economy was different. Well, thank goodness Georgia has a rainy day fund balance. It's raining, and we're going to do our part to help our citizens. We'll suspend the gas tax, and we will also help families with tax refunds that we passed yesterday, sending $500 to families, $250 to individuals, and $375 to head of households. That's going to help them cover the devastating cost of this inflation that was, in my opinion, caused by putting way too much money in the economy, which also increased our debt level tremendously. And I ascribe both parties to that in D.C. Now of our $3 or $4 trillion we collect, we're spending $500 billion just on the interest. It's going to some people here, but also going to places like China, Japan. What could we do with $500 billion if it stayed here? I urge your support of this resolution, and Mr. President, I will yield for questions.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 53rd with a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yield.
I'll yield.
Isn't it true that I and many in this chamber are grateful for this bill?
I think that most everybody in Georgia will be grateful for this. We're looking at gas prices of about $4.25 average today, according to AAA, and $5.31 or so for diesel. And it's a tough time for everybody when you fill your tank up. I've heard some dollar figures from some people. It's amazing what it's costing now to fill vehicles up, and we've got to get our energy production back up and help take care of this.
Thank you for that. And isn't it true that the other day I helped my son fill up his diesel truck at a cost of $165? And isn't it true that I fainted at that point?
Well, I'm sure the senator knows of what he speaks, and had I been there to render medical attention, I would have certainly done it.
I needed mouth-to-mouth, though. Isn't it further true that Governor Kemp has led this issue, and we're most grateful for his leadership when it comes to helping the people of Georgia and putting Georgians first?
We certainly are. I think he's leading the country with the #1 state to do business, with taking care of our citizens, and his fiscally prudent management that built up this record day rainy fund balance that can be used to take care of this storm that's upon us.
Do you continue to yield?
I'll yield.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 6th to your right.
Will the senator yield?
I'll yield.
Senator, I appreciate you presenting this measure. Many are hurting in this state, and hopefully this will deliver some much needed relief. I will say, though, that my concern is whether or not the relief is actually going to get to the consumers, because with respect to the bill, it just suspends the gas tax, but doesn't necessarily make sure that the manufacturer or the companies are passing that on to the consumers. Do you have any insight on that?
Well, I think that they've already talked about watching very carefully for that. Now, this is taxed at the wholesale level, the same as we presented the other day for our scrap tires, as an example. It's the efficient way to do it, same marketplace facilitator and others do. So what's in the pump right now won't have come from the wholesaler yet, so it may take a few days. However, there's $15,000 fines per violation for price gouging, and I think that there's going to be people watching out for that to help protect our citizens, and I would encourage anybody that sees that to make sure that we're informed of it.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 26th with a question.
Senator Yield.
I'll yield.
Senator, as we look at the gas tax and the diesel tax, I have a concern that I've got a lot of constituents that truck drivers and do hauling, and a lot of them are on these highway contracts that we are doing now in the state of Georgia. You know, if you go to the grocery store, they got a way to pass it on. But these haulers have signed contracts, even with the fuel and even with DOT. Is there any way, or can the majority leader tell me how we deal with that? I've heard that There are some federal regulations that deal with it when it's not their cause. But the problem is, even with the fuel tax, there are contracts that have been signed, and they're dealing with DOT. So is there any way that these guys can recoup some of that since they've signed these contracts and the fuel costs going up?
You know, I'd have to let the attorneys address something like that. All I can say is that the state of Georgia is saying during this crisis, we're not going to take a penny at all or any other amount and add it to these fuel prices that our citizens are paying.
You have no more questions.
Thank you, Mr. President. I urge your support of this bill.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 36th to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President, colleagues. I rise to speak on this bill, and as our chair of our Finance Committee, I'm sure has shared with you, we voted 100% bipartisan support for this bill for all the reasons that have been laid out here. But I want to clear up some things in that conversation about trying to tag the president with creating this crisis or failing to solve it. The truth of the matter is our senator, our Georgia senator, I hope we'll all stand proud and tall behind Senator Raphael Warnock, who's called for federal relief at the gas pump and is working hard in that regard to get that done. And all should join and support that effort at the federal level as well. You know, the truth is that the administration only has control over drilling on federal lands, which amount to about 1% or 1.5% of global output. And it's the fossil fuel industry's decision not to drill. They have that choice. We are now, do you all know this? That we're now the largest producer of oil in the world. America is right now. And oil is a global market, and the battle goes on. They're seeking to talk to Saudi Arabia, to Venezuela, to jar loose more oil from those markets. And our Secretary of Energy, Jennifer Granholm, has asked the oil and gas industry to step up to the crisis at hand. Because we're in an emergency, we have to responsibly increase short-term supply where we can right now to stabilize the market and minimize harm to American families. Those are the words of our Energy Secretary. So it is very important, and I applaud the comments of the chair, that we, our conflicts and on domestic issues should end at the shores. And we support our president in his leadership on the questions facing the globe around Ukraine. Putin's ravaging that nation illegally and unlawfully from his autocratic perch over there in the Kremlin. We should all continue to be on the same page backing our president. That is a time-honored approach in this country, and I urge us all not to step across that line of seeking to make political capital against the administration on the question of Ukraine and this global crisis that has been fomented by a man named Putin, someone that we've seen lifted up and elevated and praised by the former president, if people will recall. So let's all band together. Let's push for a federal relief on taxes at the pump on our gas, and let's speak with one voice loudly that we support the administration's efforts. And frankly, the oil industry and the gas industry can also do their part by stepping up. You know, they have it's not that that we're not allowing them to drill, which has kind of been intimated, but the truth is that there are permits that oil companies have, then they're not accessing those permits right here in the U.S. because it's not cost effective. They're making their decisions on the expectation that demand for fossil fuels will decrease. So drilling won't result in future profits. So it's a complex issue, no doubt. We band together on cutting the taxes on the gas at the pump. Let's band together on backing the president and thanking our U.S. Senator for lifting the call loud and clear to ease federal taxes on the prices that consumers are paying at the pump. Thank you very much for your attention, and I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 27th to speak to the measure.
Good morning, Mr. President and colleagues. I want to start by commending Governor Kemp for bringing this important legislation that will help every single person who buys anything in the state of Georgia, who lives in the state of Georgia, who does business in the state of Georgia, which is every single one of our constituents, and also to the senator from the 52nd. Thank you for accurately and factually laying out not only what this legislation will do, but how we got where we are. The previous speakers pointed to Vladimir Putin, who certainly has a significant hand in the gas prices today. But there's a question that you should ask yourself. When did gas prices go up more under this administration? Before Putin or after Putin? And if this is all on Putin, the answer would be, well, the gas prices have risen more since Putin's invasion of Ukraine than they did before Putin's invasion of Ukraine. However, that is not true. Gas prices were up $1 a gallon last year alone. The senator from the 52nd laid out some of those reasons. I want to crystallize those into two separate categories. And the first one is oil policy, domestic energy policy. We are now seeing what happens when radicals are in charge of energy policy in the United States. We are seeing inflation unlike that which we have seen since 40 years ago. Natural gas is up 25% and electricity is up 10%. On top of the gas prices that we have seen. But the other thing that happened is record spending from the federal government that has put inflationary pressure, predictable inflationary pressure, across the entire economy. And who predicted this? Well, President Obama's former economist, Larry Summers, in 2021, before the Biden administration passed the American Rescue Plan, said, quote, "This is going to set off inflationary pressure the kind of which we have not seen in a generation." That prompted President Biden's economist, Jared Bernstein, to say that Summers was flat out wrong. Well, Summers, unfortunately, was flat out right. In February of 2021, the Biden administration told us that the 4% inflation will be transitory, meaning it would end quickly. In October of last year, when it had grown to 6%, the Biden administration told us that it was a sign of a good economy. In January of this year, when it had risen to 7.5%, the Biden administration blamed corporate greed. And now, in March, that we've reached 10%, it's all Vladimir Putin. No. This is the response, in large part, if not most part, to fiscal policy and energy policy, both of which are being driven by the radical left. Mr. President, I support this legislation, but I'm concerned that it won't be enough, because this legislation ends in May, and I have zero confidence that this administration will get this problem under control by the end of May. And to support that assertion, I will close by reading you a quote from then-candidate Biden when he spoke about the oil industry. He was asked by then-President Trump if he was going to shut down the oil industry, and he answered, quote, "Number one, no more subsidies for the fossil fuel industry. No more drilling on federal lands. No more drilling, including offshore. No ability for the oil industry to drill, period. It ends. Number one," unquote. Mr. President, I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 25th to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today in support of this measure, and I would like to thank the governor as well for leading the charge on this, and the senator from the 52nd as well for leading the charge on this. This is the least that we could do in suspending the state fuel tax in this measure. And I'll repeat what one of the senators said earlier. This is a complex issue, and it does have a lot of moving parts to it. But the solution is really, really simple. And I'm not sitting up here trying to have partisan politics, but when you have an administration that attacks an industry by saying that we're completely getting away from this form of energy, it changes the environment in which we're in, and it changes the production of the companies who are producing the fossil fuel, and it becomes a situation where when the industry sees that from a regulatory standpoint, from an administrative standpoint, that your way of doing business is no longer going to be acceptable, it increases the cost of those individuals that are doing those businesses. And think about this: we could be producing our own energy from places like Texas, Oklahoma, South Dakota, Alaska, the Keystone Pipeline, with Canada, North American Agreement, but instead we have an environment that has increased the cost at home so much that we're forced to go overseas to get our products. I don't think there's anybody in this room that's not for alternative energy. I'm for always trying to produce ways to improve your energy level, whether it's electric, nuclear, wind, solar. All those things are fine, and you could you can be doing them all at the same time, and it would be in the best interest of the citizens of this state and the citizens of this country. But when you have a situation where you want to pick winners and losers, electric over fossil fuel, solar over wind, nuclear over coal, you produce an environment that is unreasonable and unfair to other industries. And so the simple fix for us as a legislative body, I would hope that we could encourage as a state senate, Republican and Democrats, instead of just eliminating the state sales tax, or as our U.S. Senator has offered to eliminate the federal sales tax, I would encourage us to have our delegation, federal delegation, to ask this current administration that we go back to being energy independent, and not have to go to people like Venezuela or Russia or Saudi Arabia and other countries that do not have the United States' best interests at heart. That shouldn't be something we should be divided on. That's something that ought to unite us. And it's a shame, because I don't care if you're a Republican or Democrat in this chamber, I can guarantee you the senators' constituents from the 13th are hurting just as bad as the senators' constituents from the 15th, because it affects everybody. Energy costs, whether it's at the pumps or whether it's in your house, it affects everyone's, and it affects the way they move around, it affects the way their spending habits, and it is a shame that we've allowed ourselves, with all the resources that we have in this country, that we've allowed ourselves to increase the cost of living so much so that people are having to change their day-to-day habits or routines as individuals, because we want to create an unfair playing field as far as the energy sector is concerned by saying we want to move to the Green New Deal. Well, I can guarantee you the oil companies here in this country and the men and women that work in that industry here in this country do a lot better and a lot cleaner job as far as from an environmental standpoint than Venezuela does, or Saudi Arabia does, or Russia does. That we have the ability to create the most energy in the world right here and profit from it. But we're letting politics get in the way, and that is a shame. And I would encourage you. I'm actually going to ask every member in this body that we encourage our federal delegation to ask the current administration to change course in what they're doing, because the free market will work itself out. When electric cars become efficient and economically accessible, then guess what? They will start replacing combustible fuels, combustible engines. And it will work. It works. The technology is improving every year, and it will finally work itself out. But instead of us being concerned with all of our constituents and the cost of living, we would rather fight amongst ourselves and pay a higher cost to import something we have here. It makes absolutely no sense. And I think that every person, man and woman in this room, ought to be in the ear of your congressional leader or your United States senator and ask them the real relief, while this is a good measure for us to do at the state level, but the real relief is at the federal level, and allowing our industry to get back to work without all the regulatory burdens and things of that nature. It sounds good to say, well, there's 9,000 permits that are unused. But the truth of the matter is, there could be 9,000 permits unused, but the regulatory burdens have increased the cost of them being able to produce this stuff at home, and which in turn makes you have to go import it or seek other countries to get this energy from. So I tell you right now, this ought to be an issue that we ought to be united as elected officials on, and not try to play partisan politics on. But I do appreciate the senator, because I know this is going to pass, because it is a small measure that can help our working Georgians and businesses. But I'm telling you, we could do a lot better if we would encourage this current administration to change course and go back to an energy independent model, so we'll no longer be put in this position to depend on countries that do not like us, that do not like our way of life, and they're jealous of our way of life, but they're going to take advantage of the situation that we're in right now and profit off us being divisive here at home. That's who the real winners are going to be, is these foreign entities that are now going to benefit from domestic policy. So, but I'll yield the well, Mr. President, and thank you for the time. I appreciate everyone's yes vote, and because it is a good measure for us to do, and I do appreciate the governor leading on this. Thank you.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 42nd to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. We shouldn't allow one-sided misconceptions to color this whole debate, and unfortunately, every time someone gets up and presents a good versus evil, black versus white, non-nuanced view of the issue of climate change, oil production, gas prices, and how we are treating American consumers, it's necessary to get up and put a little more nuance and color on that conversation, because really it is critical, and we all should be able to agree that oil and gas policy, energy policy, and climate change are all very complex and layered issues that are important for us to try to tackle, and it in no way is easy, it in no way is uncomplicated, and it in no way is black and white or good versus evil. And so I just want to remind everyone as part of that statement that, in case you actually didn't know this, the oil companies' profits soared to $174 billion in 2021. The largest oil and gas companies made a combined $174 billion in profits in the first 9 months of 2021 as gasoline prices climbed. In that same year, the 24 top oil and gas companies made more than $74 billion in net income. Exxon alone posted a net income of $6.75 billion in the third quarter, its highest profit since 2017, and has seen its revenues jump by 60%. The company credited the rising cost of oil for bolstering these profits, as did BP, which made $3.3 billion in the third quarter profit. The Biden administration released around that same time 50 million barrels of oil from the National Strategic Reserve to help dampen costs. But oil and gas companies have shown little willingness so far to ramp up production to help reduce these costs. And a new report recently released by the government watchdog group Accountable.us accuses them of taking advantage of bloated prices, fleecing American families along the way amid the ongoing fallout from the COVID-19 pandemic. The president of that organization stated, "Americans looking for someone to blame for the pain they experience at the pump need look no further than the wealthy oil and gas company executives who choose to line their own pockets rather than lower gas prices with their billions of dollars." 11 of this particular large group of oil and gas companies gave payouts to shareholders worth more than $36.5 billion collectively in 2021, while a dozen bought back $8 billion worth of stock. This focus, rather than on further drilling on the unused permits that have already been issued, has caused frustration, with Jennifer Granholm, the energy secretary, stating that oil and gas companies are not flipping the switch as quickly as the demand requires. The glut of new drilling has made our country awash with oil in recent years, turning the U.S. into a top-level exporter as well as a domestic supplier. But this has kept prices low, to the displeasure of investors. The oil and gas industry has fought the administration's attempts to pause new drilling permits on federal land, despite its unwillingness to expand operations in order to reap the returns of costlier oil, and the fact that the industry is currently sitting on 14 million acres of already leased land that isn't being used, an area double the size of Massachusetts. It is not the government that is banning the oil and gas industry from drilling more, an expert analyst at Raymond James told CNN. It's pressure from their shareholders. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 33rd to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President, my fellow senators, colleagues, friends, and y'all. I just want to thank Governor Kemp and also Senator Warnock for coming together on the state and federal level to try and alleviate this gas crisis. And I know for sure that all of us here today will come together on HB 304 and do our part to try and alleviate the pain that people are experiencing at the pump. I also filled up today, Senator from the 53rd, and it cost me about $100. And that's why I'm walking a little faster, because my wallet is kind of light. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 31st to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to make a couple comments on this great, happy St. Patrick's Day. And I know everybody in here is probably ready to get out of here, especially the folks maybe from Savannah. But let's talk about some facts just real quick, because I know there's a lot of debate about, what oil companies are doing and everything else. But the pure and simple facts is that the CPI inflation in America ending, measured from February 2022, going back 12 months, and over those 12 months, I don't think there was a Ukraine conflict, was 7.9%. So every good that every family in Georgia, middle-class family, low-class family, folks that are living in poverty, across the gamut in our state, families who want to be successful are paying 7.9% greater on everything that they're buying. Everything, not just from what they're putting in their vehicles, but food on the table, milk, diapers, energy costs, insurance, everything. And for us to sit here and say that, it's because of a conflict, it's just disingenuous. The other thing, too, and to echo what the senator from the 25th said and others, is that we have the capability to be independent with our energy production. And for us to rely on folks and negotiate with the president of Venezuela for the past many years, and we've talked about his atrocities, his human rights violations, how he's treated his own citizens, how he's treated Americans, and we're going to go negotiate with that guy? Like, give me a break. Let's get serious if we're talking about what we want to do in America, how we're going to support Georgians, and what is our place in the free world. The other thing, just to talk about too, in terms of how inflation impacts families. If we were to measure income for just the average individual or average family, 7.9% of inflation is almost wiping out income for so many families in just 1 month. Just think about that. And I think this gesture and this work that Governor Kemp has taken on, and I'm sure in some way, shape, or form, somebody's going to criticize him for doing it, which, is pretty ridiculous. But I think any relief that we can find to basically give back to the taxpayers, and I agree with the senator from the 26th about what are we doing for truckers. As a legislature, there are ways to make the life and business of truckers in America and in the state of Georgia easier by how we're letting them do business with their fleet management, reducing the license burden, fees, and reduce government that is creating barriers for them to hire more people, buy more vehicles, and get more products moving across our interstate. So with that, Mr. President, let's be genuine about what we're doing here and what we're doing for Georgians if we're going to have a debate on foreign policy. With that, Mr. President, I'll yield the will unless there's questions.
You have a question. Chair recognizes the senator from the 27th with a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator, you yield?
Yes.
You spoke a little bit about domestic energy independence. Isn't it true that while, on his first day in office actually, while the president was shutting down the permit for the Keystone Pipeline, which was under construction, which was going to be the first ever net zero emission pipeline that we had in this country, which is going to be 100% fueled by sustainable energy by 2030. Isn't it true that while we were stopping that he was lifting the sanctions on the Nord Stream 2 pipeline to allow Russia to provide national gas to the Germans?
Yes, Senator, I believe that is correct.
Senator, you mentioned the inflationary pressure that we have. Obviously, that was put in place by government spending in large part. I mentioned this earlier, but I'd be curious, what do you think that President Biden meant when he said, no ability for the oil industry to continue to drill, period, ends number one?
I mean, my interpretation is that I'm going to tax, I'm going to regulate, I'm going to put up barriers to basically stop America from basically creating energy sources to help American families. And I think that the more we see regulation, these bans on leases, the things we're seeing the federal government put in place is only hampering us and is setting us backwards, especially now while we're in the middle of a world conflict that is only growing by the day. And I think we do need to thank, I think, our leaders in Congress who have been leading on this in both parties and stepping up and providing aid to the Ukrainian government while we're dealing with this issue. But the back door, I think what Congress is doing and having negotiations with Venezuela and Iran is completely disingenuous to the American people and I think the citizens of Georgia while we're suffering and dealing with the inflation crisis and every single day seeing store owners and small business owners trying to find help to staff restaurants and staff convenience stores and staff all these basic things that, if you notice, slowly by slowly, we're seeing the hours get smaller and smaller when people can go and buy those goods. Over time, if we continue with a 7.9% rate of inflation throughout this year and into next year, more and more of those small businesses are going to close. And so something dynamically changes and we see less government, less taxation, and less regulation impacting those businesses to produce for American families. Thank you, Senator. Mr. President, I yield the well.
Senator has yielded the well. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against House Bill 304? The chair recognizes the senator from the 10th to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of this body. What was supposed to be a simple bipartisan bill really turned into the radical right trying to make and score political points with something that we all wanted to participate in, and that is trying to save money for the average Georgian. Somewhere along the way, we seem to have lost sight of that because I heard mention of a Keystone pipeline that's owned by the Canadians. They failed to mention that that pipeline, 3/4 of it has already been built, stretches down from Canada, Alberta, all the way down to Illinois. They also failed to mention that the XL portion of that pipeline, which hasn't been built, the oil is still being shipped down to those refineries in Texas by trucks. What I heard was a discussion about inflation. I don't know too many economists in here or too many advisors to President Biden that sit in this chamber, but I can tell you, based on just simple supply and demand, when the supply is short, I think everybody in here and the demand is there that the price is going to increase. That is not a complicated economic equation. I also heard conversation about, President, these 9,000 permits and those permits not being our American oil and gas companies not producing more crude in this country. There's a simple reason for that. With all these permits and the sedimentary nature of the ground that they have to drill those wells in, particularly in the United States, they're drilling through rocks. It's a lot more expensive for them to drill it. And with that added expense, they expect the price to be higher. But if we're keeping the barrel of crude low with exporting from other countries, there's no incentive for them to go out there and lose dollars on building wells. Folks, this is not a political argument. This is simple supply and demand. This is simple economics. And I can tell you that the previous failed administration, for my former president, did the exact same thing. These arguments that we're hearing in here make absolutely no sense considering what we're discussing with House Bill 304. And I'm glad our caucus is not going to sit idly down and take these political hits by those out there who want to seek office, particularly at a statewide level. Some in here may have national ambition. I don't know. But if you're going to talk about the facts, tell the whole facts, or at least go learn something about economics. I yield the well.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against House Bill 304? The chair sees none. Is there objection to agreeing with the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the chair would like to extend the opportunity to close the debate to the senator from the 52nd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Wanted to address a couple of issues. You know, we talked about the legal issues with the truckers, and I was informed during that time that the federal contracts do have outs that can help those people in an emergency like that. The other point I probably should have made was the governor can extend this. We won't be in session then, I hope, at the end of May. He can do it when we're not. This is usually the time we do it, and it gets extended. We'll, see what happens. China's been in COVID lockdown. That's dropping the demand a little bit. Russia, Ukraine could make it a lot worse. We don't know. So that will be his prerogative, but it will only delay it unless we come back and ratify it. We have to approve it, or else it will be owed in back by the wholesalers. So I want to make that clear. The flipping the switch, I mean, that just doesn't happen. I tried to go through and explain the process, and they can't just go back and turn it back on. The permits are one step in the process, then you got to get a land surface agreement, you got to get transportation. There's steps in that process, and whether economically feasible or not, but we heard about Exxon's profit, and a couple of years ago they lost $20 billion. There are years they win and they lose, but the way to get profits, if you think they're unreasonable, down to a reasonable level, is not to beat them up, but to have ways to encourage production and increase the supply. They said it was simple economic supply and demand. That's correct. It is simple economic supply and demand. When you start off in day one and you shut down permits, you shut down the pipeline, investors don't want to get involved in that. They don't see a bright future in that, and it's had a problem. And I do want to also talk about the supply. And again, remember, we had increased 50% in 4 years. We dropped from 13.1 million barrels to 11.6 million barrels. We've got to get the supply back up. And note on the pipelines, yeah, there's a Keystone pipeline that's running. It's always been running. There's a Keystone XL that was under construction that has now been stopped. That would have been a tremendous help in encouraging people to get supplies out of that area. And pipelines are the safest, most environmentally safe form of transportation, safer than on the roads, safer than rail, safer than barges. The people that will stop this in our country don't have any problem with that barge pulling into the Gulf and delivering foreign oil, which is a less safe form of it. Anyway, I hope we've had a good debate on this, and I hope that we will do things that encourage production and make us more secure from enemies that hate us by having our own supply and not repeat what happened in the 70s. Mr. President, with that, I yield the well.
Senator has closed out the debate. Is there objection agreeing the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 55, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. On behalf of 11 million Georgians, thank you. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption of House Bill 1147?
House Bill 1147 by Representatives Rhodes of the 120th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 3 of Title 27 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to wildlife generally, so as to authorize the hunting and trapping of raccoons and possum year-round and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Natural Resources and the Environment recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Harper of the 7th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Natural Resources and the Environment offers the following substitute to House Bill 1147. To amend Chapter 3 of Title 27 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to wildlife generally, so as to authorize, at the discretion of the Board of Natural Resources, the trapping on private land and hunting of raccoons and possum year-round and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 7th to present the much-anticipated House Bill 1147.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, House Bill 1147 simply does two things. One, and I'll just say it in the same sentence, it opens up the possibility for trapping and hunting of raccoons and possums year-round to be in that, for that determination on when that would happen by the DNR board. As many of you know, the DNR board, we set the bookends on hunting seasons in our state, and the DNR board determines what those seasons are within those bookends. This is just opening up that bookend to a 12-month period, and the DNR board is planning to allow year-round hunting on private lands only, but on public lands, it will be the same as the current seasons for raccoons and possums. And so when I say public lands, that's lands owned, operated, or leased by the state. And that's simply what this bill does. Mr. President, Alabama and Florida also have no seasons. Tennessee and South Carolina have no seasons for raccoons. So Georgia is the only state in the southeast that does not already address this in this way. Mr. President, that's what the bill does. I'd be happy to answer any questions. And if there are none, I'll yield the will.
You've got questions. Chair recognizes your good friend, the senator from the 53rd, to your left.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator, yield.
I will yield to my good friend.
And thank you for letting me be a part of this great discussion at committee when you were a little short that day. Oh, I'm sorry, you're always short. But anyway, Senator, yield for a couple of questions.
I will yield to my good friend.
Isn't it true that armadillos are akin to the possum?
I think I know where you're going with that, to my good friend, but I would love to hear your explanation of how they're kin.
Well, isn't it true that armadillos are just possum on a half shell?
That is true, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Have you ever had possum on the half shell?
Well, with dumplings, they're pretty good, I hear. At least the senator from the 24th told me. Isn't it further true that they're eating the fowl and bird population's eggs?
That is correct.
Isn't it true that I had 28 wild turkeys on the property where I live recently?
I believe you know of what you speak.
And isn't it true that that population will be reduced if we don't do something about the possum and armadillo and raccoon nuisance?
The rules chairman is correct. We have an increase in population in the raccoon and possum population in our state, while at the same time we have a decrease in population of the turkey and quail populations. Raccoons and possums are nest predators of turkey. Quail also nest predators at sea turtles. And because we're seeing an increase in the population of one species and a decrease in population of another species that they're predators of, I think it can be reasonably concluded that they are connected, and which is why the importance of this underlying legislation and the reason we're bringing this before you, and the reason DNR supports the bill, and the reason DNR biologists are behind it. So our state wildlife biologists support this legislation and believe it's the right thing to do.
Did you notice that the senator from the 53rd asked the question and then stopped listening the second he asked the question?
I noticed, Mr. President.
You have more questions.
I'll be happy to yield.
Chair recognizes the good senator from the 41st with a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Chairman, do you yield?
I'll yield.
Is it true that sea turtles are endangered species here in this great state?
That is a true statement.
Is it also true that possums and raccoons indiscriminately eat their sea turtle eggs whenever they feel like they want to eat them?
That is a very true statement.
Sir, do you further yield?
I'll further yield to my friend.
Is it also true that possums like to eat the eggs of backyard chicken farmers?
That is also a true statement.
Do you further yield?
I'll yield.
Have you heard of raccoons and possums murderously killing and destroying backyard chickens in urban areas?
I am sure the lady knows of which she speaks.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Do you continue to yield?
I'll yield, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 47th with a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the senator yield?
I'll yield.
Could you spell possum for me?
O-P-O-S-S-U-M, I do believe.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 40th.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you yield?
Yes, ma'am.
Isn't it true that when we were talking about a very similar bill in committee, that it was stated by one of the members of the committee that the popularity of raccoon hunting and possum hunting had declined, and so therefore it is very possible that what this bill does will have very little effect on the nesting bird population, and that DNR and some other people testified that what would really make a big difference in saving nesting birds and increasing their population is working to restore the habitat that they need to make their nests.
That is true. I will say in response to that also that there are a number of tools in the toolbox, so to speak, that DNR utilizes to address issues and populations within game species and non-native species in our state. This is just an additional tool in that toolbox to help them continue to address that, and I think they made that same notion in committee as well. So combined with addressing the habitat while also addressing the other issues and giving DNR all the tools it needs to do what they do best, I think is important, which is the purpose of this legislation. Yes,
Do you further yield?
I'll yield.
Is it not true that when you're fighting viruses, that things like masks and vaccines are also additional tools in the toolbox to keep that virus at bay?
I will say regarding the underlying legislation, I look forward to giving DNR the resources they need to make the decisions that they can in regards to our game species in this state. With that, Mr. President, I'll yield the well.
The senator has yielded the well. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the motion? For what purpose does the senator from the 33rd rise? He waves. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against House Bill 1147? Chair sees none. Questions on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to adoption of the committee substitute? The chair hears none, and the committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed nay. Secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 44, the nays are 10. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. Some interesting patterns on that vote. Chair recognizes the majority leader.
Mr. President, I move that we immediately transmit House Bill 304 to the House.
Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption?
House Resolution 680.
We're gonna move on to the next bill. They've got to go retrieve that bill, that physical copy of the bill, to bring it back here. I'll recognize you for that motion after this next bill. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption of House Resolution 683?
House Resolution 683 by Representatives Green of the 151st and others, a resolution authorizing the granting of non-exclusive easements for the construction, installation, operation, and maintenance of facilities, utilities, roads, and ingresses and egresses in, on, over, under, upon, across, or through property owned by the state of Georgia in Bartow, Douglas, Fulton, Gilmer, Gwinnett, Haralson, Paulding, Sumter, and Thomas counties and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on State Institutions and Property recommends that this resolution do pass by committee substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Harbison of the 15th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on State Institutions and Property offers the following substitute to House Resolution 683. Authorizing the granting of non-exclusive easements for the construction, installation, operation, and maintenance of facilities, utilities, roads, and ingresses and egresses in, on, over, under, upon, across, or through property owned by the state of Georgia in Bartow, Douglas, Emmanuel, Fulton, Gilmer, Gwinnett, Haralson, Paulding, Sumter, and Thomas counties and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 15th, the Dean of the Senate, to present House Resolution 683.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you very much, fellow senators. This is just simply the Senate State Institution and Property Commission's annual housekeeping bill. It conveys sometimes very small slivers of real estate in various cities around the state. And this is just a small portion. We got a larger portion that would be coming. At the same time, each and every senator in the body has been notified of this particular action. So as a consequence, I submit it to you for your consideration. There are no questions, Mr. President. I will yield the well.
You don't appear to have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against House Resolution 683? The chair sees none. Questions on the adoption of the committee substitute? Is there objection to adoption of the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. Question on the adoption of the resolution by substitute. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the adoption of the resolution by substitute, the yeas are 53. The nays are 0. This resolution, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore adopted by substitute. Uber just delivered that resolution, or that bill. Chair now recognizes the majority leader for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to try this again. I move that we immediately transmit HB 304 to the House.
Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption?
House Bill 304 by Representatives Lott of the 122nd and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 48-9-3 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to the levy of excise taxes on motor fuels and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
The majority leader has asked for unanimous consent for House Bill 304 to be immediately transmitted to the House. Is there objection? The chair hears none, and it is immediately transmitted. The chair once again recognizes the majority leader for a very important motion.
Ten a.m. on Friday, 18 March 2022.
I'm glad you stopped screaming at exactly the right moment. Mr. Secretary, are there any announcements you'd like to make?
The Senate Committee on Rules will meet immediately upon adjournment in room 450 of the Capitol. Let's see. The Health and Human Services Subcommittee on Mental Health Parity will meet in room 450 from 1 p.m. And all other committees have been canceled. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 36th for an announcement.
Mr. President, thank you. And colleagues, I just want to remind you that we have a Working Families Legislative Caucus luncheon that is beginning now. You can pick up the box lunch, all members, in room 307 in the LOB. And we're going to be talking about the Department of Labor and key unemployment issues that we face here in Georgia. Thank you, and appreciate you getting your lunch and getting on the Zoom. Thank you. I yield well.
Chair recognizes the distinguished agriculture, I'm going to say commissioner, chairman, for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. President. So the Ag Committee will meet at 2 o'clock in Senate Mez, 2 o'clock for our Ag, Consumer, and Consumer Affairs. Oh, and tomorrow is John Bullock Day. Wear your blue jeans. Thanks.
You delivered that with great passion today. Your enthusiasm was deep-rooted in St. Patrick's Day. All right. I got a birthday to celebrate here. The majority leader has moved that the Senate stand adjourned until Friday, March 18th, 2022 at 10 a.m. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes really have it today. Senate stands adjourned.